walk out to the show and pour out your door. We got all this love for you. Touchdown on that plane and put in a plane. More than just a podcast for you.
Randy, you want to jump in there?
I was like Kevin go.
Okay.
I don't have anything really of any value to add, in football. From a basketball standpoint, I know most of the hamstring injuries in basketball happen in the first month to 2 months of the season. Are they ready? Have they gone full speed yet? Are the football players? But I to prepare for this question, I just looked at the list of injuries by cap, by the salary. Like Von Miller was a top injured player, but it was all spread all over the place: hamstrings, knees, ankles, shoulders, Achilles, pectorals. So there's no concentration. Like, remember a couple years back, I think the Florida Gators had a bunch of knee injuries one year, and the strength coach got fired because they felt like that he had some bad practices. But in the NFL, it looks like it's just a smattering of injuries. It's all over the board. So I'm with
Jamesetta.
I'm kind of with Coach Toliver and Jamesetta. The guys just apparently they just may not be quite ready yet. So
yeah, Jamesetta, that's another question. I know. Well, actually, it's really like a working question. I'm gonna do my research now. I'm getting into the research stuff and pull the numbers. If I'm mistaken, and I could be wrong, but I want to validate it for next week, is that there's more knee injuries period today in football than any other part of the body.
Yeah, ACL. I looked it up. It was a lot of ACLs for this season. I just couldn't tell. Yeah. I couldn't get the information compared to seasons ago. But ACL was hitting, was hot. The last couple of weeks. A lot of people.
Yeah, just this year though. Just this year. That's all. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm good, James. But I'm good.
You got it. That's a popular question. Then the injury one, I wrote it down. So now we go to my favorite question, and this is the tweener question. This one I actually know about up front. So we're going to talk track and field in our tweener series today. So when it comes to speed events, can athletes run both indoor and outdoor track? And what makes one athlete better in one season than another? And another question is, can you make money if you're in track and field outside of college at both indoor and outdoor?
I'm going to go first on this one. The track piece, it just depends on, what the body can withstand, how they train, what they're capable of, just like any other sport. If he's a point guard, can he move and play forward? Can he move and play center? Can he move and play, a three-point shooter? How versatile is an athlete? So for me, looking at track, there's a lot of guys that can do both. They can do indoor, they can do outdoor and be good at it. It's because that's what they prepare for and they train for. Some of them use it, the indoor piece to get ready for the spring, for the outdoor season. And that's typically those two things that most of the track runners do. Can they make a lot of money outside of college? Yes, they can make a ton of money. You know why? Because track is big, just like basketball, AAU basketball, kind of like the circuit. That's kind of like how it's set up. So, yeah, they both could be done. But it just depends on the individual, really. What are they capable of?
So I know you guys didn't think of it, but when I was in high school, I was a hurdler.
All right.
I ran track.
He's a short hurdler, huh?
Hey, my 4-step was fabulous. Thank you very much.
You're going to have to show us that when we meet up.
Oh, my gosh. I've got pictures. I really do. But I would say, and this is just research and experience, typically people, like Kevin said, they run indoor to prepare for outdoor. Because outdoor is like, there's no Olympics for indoor track, what the premier races that you get, not that you don't get accolades for indoor, but the premier races, what people show up to see, they're outdoor events. And so a lot of people, they use one to prepare for the other. The seasons run different. The size of the track is even different. You're gonna run like an indoor, they have like some races it's a 50, some it's a 55, some it's a 60, depends on the size of the track. But you won't find a 55 meter or a 50 meter race in outdoor. So that you have to actually, in order to, you can do both, but you have to have a really good coach, because you have to peak for the indoor championships event, and then that peak should just be a little pause so that you can build to get faster and faster for outdoor. If you go out and look, indoor times are typically slower than your outdoor times, and it's all about when you peak. And so that's very important. If you have an athlete that doesn't have the right coach to help them peak properly, they won't be able to do both, because if you peak at the end of the indoor season, then you don't have anything left in the tank when you get to outdoor, if that makes sense.
Yep, absolutely correct.
And as far as making money, this was really interesting. One of my first experiences with making money for track and field is we lived in Europe when I was in high school, and one of my friends they call him a rabbit, and he wasn't going to run in college, but he was fast in high school, and the professional athletes that were training in Europe, they trained him. He got paid to pace them. He would be, we called him a rabbit because he's the one that they were going to pace. And so I didn't even know that was my experience with money and track. But they can get endorsements. They can win prize money. I will say that in college, collegiate athletes have the same responsibilities as far as dollars and the same restriction that football athletes have. But there's like a caveat is if you're getting ready to train for the Olympics, because there's an expectation when you're training for the Olympics that you have to get money from somewhere. So the NCAA has the ability to work with athletes because they do have to fundraise. They do have to get scholarship. They have to get sponsorships, because going to the Olympics, you don't get paid to do that. But it's really, really interesting in that if you work it right, you can start making money in track and field before you even go to college. And that's something unique to track.
So for me, I don't know if y'all know this, but in Jacksonville, the Puma Olympic track team practices here. I don't know where they practiced before. Their coach is really good gentleman. He coached at a lot of different colleges, and now, like I say, he works for Puma. So he has a salary from Puma, and all his runners are from all over the United States, and they have a salary. But like you said, Jamesetta, everything is based off of your performance at the Olympics. So you can make millions or you can make thousands. You know, it's a great start to life. The span of it is not that long. I'm thinking about like 8 to 10 years maybe, but they don't have other jobs, you know. So, you know, Nike has a team, Puma has a team, I'm pretty sure Under Armour has a team. So you can go online if you want to see who's on these different teams and who's sponsored by these different shoe companies. You can just go online and put in Puma track team, Olympic track team, or put in Nike Olympic track team. So it's very, very interesting. The difference for me for the indoor and outdoor, I couldn't research this like I wanted to, but the biggest difference for me is just indoor. You have everything is smaller, so you have less time to make mistakes. So on outdoor, you can make a mistake in the start. You can make a mistake in you know, just lifting off and exploding. But with your pure talent and speed, you can catch up with somebody. But for the indoor, everything is different. The thing that I'm amazed about indoor is I took my daughter to South Carolina for an indoor meet, and that raise in the curves, I'm like, that doesn't mess y'all up. Because, you know, I ain't never run no track or whatever.
Oh, yeah.
That raise in the curves, man. And it's like if you close your eyes, man, it just sounds funny when they get on that thing and they run that in those curves. And she said no. She said you just kind of lean. I think she said you kind of lean in or something like that.
Well, you got to lean into it. Is it a board track or is it a turf?
Yeah, it was a turf. Turf track, but it had those raised curves, man.
You lean into
Leaning to the turn.
Leave
Yep.
it to the curb.
Yeah, I probably fall. I probably lean all the way up and just fall
No.
over.
There's a technique to that. Now, I'm going to disagree with you that actually, yeah, it's a shorter track, but that a mistake is a mistake in track and field. There are lots of people in outdoor. You can see it. They lost the race at the start. As soon as they come out the blocks, you already know.
But you're talking 50 versus what, 100?
Matter.
I think it's 60. Isn't it,
60 versus 100. Yeah, that's a big difference.
Only if you got bunnies like that.
Yeah,
but
yeah,
most
yeah.
people don't.
Yeah.
Track is hundredths of a second. You have to be on.
Own it.
Yep.
If you're not, toodles.
You're done. You're done.
Yeah, it's real. I love events. I love sports that you can't blame nobody else. Like, and that's my daughter. You know, she runs track and boxing. I love sports where you can't blame nobody else. You got either you're ready to come. It's either you or a mano a mano, and it's kind of cool. Yeah, I love those.
Moment of truth.
It's a moment of truth. Like basketball, football, you can't do that. But those other one-on-one sports, tennis, like you can't blame nobody else. You got to get out there and do that thing. That's pretty cool.
Track is one of those. You have to be mentally on and physically on every single race. We're going to go to the next question. And this one might get a little bit of controversy.
Mm-hmm.
Is it okay for a parent to speak to a coach about playing time for his or her?
I completely disagree.
Ooh, let's get it.
I completely disagree.
Let's get it.
Ask the question.
I will run a parent out of the room and you come talk to me about playing time. Don't do it. I'm not doing it. I'm not doing it. No.
Okay. It's imperative for parents to have communication with the coaches, like all the way up, because like from Pop Warner to high school to even in college, it's imperative in different situations, but it's only for different situations. So, Kevin, what you got? What you got? Let me hear what you got. What you think?
I think that I'll establish clearly before the season to the parents that choose to show up at the coaches meeting that we will not have discussions around playing time after a game. And if there ever will happen, it will happen with your athlete in attendance with the parent so that we can all talk together. But I would encourage parents to coach their child to have this conversation rather than having the parent involved, because the parent can't always be there for the child. So there comes a point in time when you got to grow up, and there may be reasons why parents need to talk to coaches, but I'm not really sure playing time is one of them.
Yeah, development, Kevin. Development. It's the same development that we try to get kids to develop.
Changing the words. You changing those words. I got you. So I got you. First, try to promote your kids to have communication with adults to get through processes, and they're not going to play all the time. I got you. But we already said it's a lot of coaches that are not good and not good enough to communicate. They're doing it because they love the sport, but they have a lot of work they have to do in the Pop Warner field and the high school field. Do we agree with that?
I agree.
I agree with that. So sometimes you can coach your kid to speak to an adult, and the adult doesn't have the forethought to tell the kid, hey, well, you need to work on this, or you need to work on this. They might just say, hey, you're gonna play when I say play. It doesn't work like that. If you pay for something, if you put money into something, you have the right to speak to a person. I coach basketball, and I encourage people to come talk to me, but I keep it real with them. If they don't want to understand how real you keep it, I keep it real. What you got, Kevin?
Well, I think, there's poor coaches, there's poor bosses, there's poor teachers,
True.
There's
poor parents.
Well, yeah, all across the board. So, dealing with situations that you don't think are fair. I mean, again, it gets back to if it's, fair is what you accept. So if you don't think it's fair, then have a conversation. You got to teach your kid to have that conversation. And if the coach is incapable of explaining it or being real, again, then that's an opportunity for that young man or young woman to learn how it works. And not everybody is whatever. Not some people are average, right? And
Yep.
you got to deal with it. And but I don't know. I just think like with the middle school age kids I deal with, I run into the fact that every now and then I have some really exceptionally talented young men, and I have some kids that are pretty talented as well. But not everybody in basketball, not everybody can touch the ball. And in fact, about, on average, maybe in the entire game, if you can get the ball in your hands more than 10%, you're kind of special. But every parent thinks the kid should have the ball in their hand 50% of the time. And it's just unrealistic. And, so I've lost some really good players because they weren't good enough to be the guy that got the ball. And the parent couldn't they just couldn't understand it. And so we part ways. And so it goes. But I just think Kenny Sanchez made a lot of news down here. Did you guys hear about Menendez, football coach? Maybe you don't hear it, but he came over from Las Vegas.
I heard about it.
And the AD was on his staff, and a parent approached him about playing time after a game, and it just went totally off the rails where the coach got fired, and there was all kinds of crazy stuff. But probably could have been avoided by a parent taking 12 hours to talk about the next day. And I'll close at this too. I coach all my kids. Think on it. Don't let the moment, and maybe I can go tell their parents this too, don't let the moment get in the way of having a conversation, a professional conversation. Sleep on it. If it's important and it's still important, the next day have that conversation. But so much of it is so emotion driven, so much nonsense in the stands, so much worrying about what other people think versus just, hey, I don't like this. Let me think about it. Let me sleep on it. And then tomorrow, if I still don't like it, I can call the coach, and the coach would probably be much more willing to talk to you the next day than after a game or, there's so much stuff happening right after a game to talk about it. It's just totally, if you ever want to have that conversation, don't do it after a game.
Especially if you lost.
24 hours.
Wow.
I'm going to say this I'm going to say this as a mom. As mom. I've never had to have, only once have I ever had to have a conversation about playing time, and it wouldn't be for what you think. So in my house, we didn't talk about playing time. I never told my kids it was okay to talk about playing time just in regards to, I wasn't going to go and say, hey, I don't think he played enough or she played enough. That's a conversation you need to have. You can think, figure it out, go to the coach, ask, what do you need to do to earn more playing time? But we're not going to have a conversation in general. I just don't feel like I'm getting played. Well, you ain't earned it. Having said that, there are three areas where, as a mom, I don't care what level my son is on, I reserve the right to have a conversation. I had an academic standard for all of my children. If you met each coach we played for knew, if they were not at a certain level academically, we weren't playing, period. I don't care. I had a conduct standard for my kids. If they didn't meet the conduct standard, that's a playing time conversation because you weren't going to play. And this is the only time I've ever actually had a conversation about playing time, is an injury. If your athlete is super, super, super competitive, they're going to try to play or run or whatever the sport is, even when they're injured. And so the one time I had a conversation with the coach was when my son was injured, and we were on the fence. Actually, we had to do this whole wild protocol to get him to play a game. He had to have pain meds, but that was the only time I actually had a conversation about playing time, because anything other than that, if it's not those three scenarios, conduct, grades, or health, and health can be mental health as well. I don't think it's appropriate for a parent to have a conversation. And y'all know I have a blog and I interview moms. And the Friday blog was one of my high school moms that I interviewed went off on her son's coach after a game. He was kicked off the team. He lost his ability to play college ball because they couldn't transfer. That was the team he couldn't no longer play for. He had no film. He had nothing. And so I use her as an example of sometimes you need to shut up and let it ride. And teach your
True. But do you get the transfer? So let me ask you this: do you get the transfer portal before you talk to your coach about what you don't actually when you want to know about playing time? You never say the word playing time. As a parent, you just say, "Hey, how's my son doing, coach?" Because I've been in talks with Urban Meyer. Trust me, he remembers me very well. How's my son doing, coach? How you looking out there? What do you need to work on? Is his confidence up? You know, and we have a conversation, and they already know when Mr. Wade gonna call, he gonna be calling about something. So like, you don't never say the word playing time in there, and then eventually he probably gonna say the word playing time. He can get on the field more if he can show more of this or show more of that. But would you advise a parent to go in the transfer portal before they talk to a coach about playing time? No, you talk about it first.
No, you need to talk about that first. And Randy, you're right.
Conversation. Like as a parent, I shouldn't be the one having that conversation. Like I shouldn't. My kid at this point in college, that's a grown man.
No, he's not. The reason the problem with people. Let me say this. Let me say this the right way so people understand. The problem with people that don't have really talented kids, they don't understand. These kids been babied because of their talent since they was 11, 14 years old. They've been going all over the country for free, getting all types of gear for free, getting all this stuff for free. They haven't had to work. They haven't had to do that. So to say they're a grown man, they have to learn that people are using them, and they have to use those people at the same time. So to say they're grown, they've been babied.
That's where we differ, because I knew that my kid was getting things. So one of the things I had to tell my kid was, you need to be able to articulate for yourself. The Bible says, be as innocent as a dove, but as wise as a serpent. If you know that there are people out there giving your kid privileges because of what they do on the field, this is just me speaking. This is what I tell my moms in my consulting firm. Then you better be on that in their character. You can't let them think that they're the next best thing to sliced bread. You have to teach them to be able to recognize and articulate certain things for themselves, especially if they're given things, because then when they get out into the real world, they don't know how to speak up for themselves. You have to teach that early and often when your child is given something because of what they do on the track or because of what they do with the ball. Because if you don't, you warp their character. You stunt their growth as leaders. And that's just something I preach to all my moms. I got you.
But don't forget about the aspect of respecting adults. Yes, sir. No, sir. Oh, yeah, he might not say something you like, but you can't say that now. You can say something to me later, and we can talk about it later. Like you instill that into them. So that's hard to come out of them when you got so many people now that are necessarily not looking at the best interest of them. They're looking at the best. They're looking at the best interest for them versus looking at the best interest for the young man.
Yes, sir. No, sir. Has nothing to do with whether or not my child knows how to articulate his best interest. You always look. My kid went to USAFA, the Air Force Academy. Mm-hmm. Of course, he knows yes, sir, no, sir. And with that, there's a way to respectfully make your point. There's a way, even if we have to have the conversation as a family, what do I need to say? I want to have the conversation. How should I talk about it? How should I bring it up? That's perfectly fine. But when it came to bringing it up, he had to be able to do that on his own. I was always there as a sounding board to say, oh, if he could always come and say, how should I say this? This is what I'm thinking, but never will I have the conversation for him. And maybe it's different because when a dad comes up to have a conversation, people don't get, there's no athletes that I know that are like, oh, that's a daddy's boy. But if you're a mom, you have to actually teach especially your son to articulate his own issues, because the moment you come in the room, the moment coaches know that you have a close relationship with your son, they start thinking that's a mama's boy, and mama's boys are seen as weak and less than in the athletic world, and you know that's. And so I had to teach my son to be able to articulate his own words, so that he be able. And maybe that's why I'm passionate about this, because y'all didn't have to deal with that. I was a single mom going through the recruiting process with my kids.
Okay, I got that point.
Yeah, well, James, we definitely agree with you, because everybody's situation is different, and I always keep that in the forefront for everybody. When people go to talk, and I say, hold up, I say, everybody's situation different, right? If you don't know all the facts, and you don't know what's going on, then you need to be real, careful in how you respond to certain things, and that's why it's good to ask him questions. That's what Kevin was talking about earlier about, he does things a certain way to develop his kids at a younger age. They're middle school kids. So it's a part of the developmental process. Like, it may take some quicker than some, it may not take so quick, it may not take it so quick, it may take them longer. And that's those differences in understanding what you're coaching and what you're recruiting. Does it fit your program? Can you help them? It's just so many things that go involved in all of that till we end up making the wrong decision. The coaches do it too, at every level.
Yeah.
I liked Jamesetta's comment about conduct, grades, and then the injury. The injury, because I was thinking clearly about performance in terms of playing time, but those are really those are the three influences on playing time that I have to deal with more often than not. It's pretty obvious.
Because their grades ain't right, or their conduct ain't right.
Exactly. I mean, it's pretty clear. The guys on the team all know who the best players are. And I don't know if I do this all the time, but I make them pick teams all the time. I put two captains and we scrimmage, we pick teams. So it's real clear to me, everybody understands who the worst players are because we're always the last ones picked. And so that kind of helps me let them all sort out who the top is versus who the other one is. And every now and then there may be a disagreement, but those guys, you can fool the fans, but it's hard to fool the players. And
Can't fool them.
No. So they all kind of solved that. But I did have an experience last year where a young man, my point guard, hurt himself and he hyperextended his knee. And about a couple minutes later, I went to him and said, "Hey, you okay?" And he's like, "Yep, I'm ready." And I put him back in the game. I had no business putting him back in that game. And then it turned out to be, he ended up having to miss a couple weeks because he actually was injured, even though he was willing to go back in and play. And that was a mistake on my side. I didn't have a chance for a parent to get on me about it because it was in the moment of the game. But but the injury piece I probably should have gotten an earful after that, but I didn't, fortunately. But I like those 3 points in addition to just, are you performance-wise?
Yeah, but you know what though, Kevin? In that area, it's kind of been the norm. It's already pretty much understood by the coach and the parent, athletic director, the whole 9 yards. If your grades ain't right, and you see a lot of that up front, you're not playing. If you got a conduct issue, you're not playing. That's been the norm. So, yes.
No.
The playing
coaches,
time thing is always coming up.
Some organizations are stricter than others.
Yes, absolutely. Because I have seen people, let's just say, no, that is not the norm. There are people who will make sure that their athletes are academically eligible during their season, but as soon as the season is over, you immediately notice they go from passing to failing.
Oh. Well, we get that all the time, Jamesetta, because we're basketball. But football grades are always good, and somehow the grades always come apart after football season's over.
Later.
Well, hold up, Jamesetta. We talking about playing time now. I want to stay on the playing time part because I don't want nobody to misunderstand.
Those are my 3 things that impact playing time, and that's what I'm saying. As a parent, you have to stay on that because there are coaches out there who will allow your child to succeed academically during their season, and as a parent, you have to be on that. You really have to be on that.
Oh well, yeah, that's true. That's true. But what I'm really trying to say, just so y'all understand where I'm coming from, is that yes, that has been some things in the past where during the season everything's good, and then when the season's over, it goes haywire. However, in my time, the last 18 years, yes, that used to happen a lot. Probably about 15, 16, 17, 18 years ago. Coaches just would sneak them in and just let them play and then forget about their grades in the spring and kids not eligible for college and now they jumping through hoops. But today, it's the norm. It ain't happening like that now, like it used to happen.
Mhm.
Even though we get faced with it, or we may get challenged with it, but I will say this, because I don't know everybody travels. I know mine. The numbers are extremely lower than what they used to be 10, 15, 18 years ago.
I'll buy that one. I'll say
That's the point I'm making.
I will say I will allow the point. Not just thinking about, there's a kid that, like, mind you, my children went to private school. Blows my mind. But we knew a kid who went to another school, and he was academically eligible up until the point where a premier Power 5 coach came to his school to physically ask for his grades. He was a high school senior. Immediately upon that coach asking for his grades, mind you, he's a senior, it was determined that he actually had a 1.9. He had to withdraw from his private school and go to a public school, and he had 1 semester to get his grades up so that he could actually play. So I'm a little bit, I won't say jaded, but I would say I have observed recently examples of people who even pay for school and don't actually have the right conversations. Like, it's still happening. I will say that it's not as common.
Here's my thing. Now, here's another question for next week. High school coaches, head coaches, athletic directors, given this day and time, what should their responsibilities be for a kid getting into college, whether it's academics or whether it's sports? Should they be a percentage of them to help those kids across the board get elected to college? Because some of them don't do it, and some of them do. Some of them take it to the heart. They want them to get in school. Like Parsons always talked about, yes, X, Y, Z, but are they in school? Did they make it to school? Did they graduate? That's his motto. That's what he believes in. That's what his foundation drives. His club drives, his soccer club, if I get that right. So if you're in the kid business, then you're in the kid business. Everything comes with it. You can't opt out just for your own benefit. It's about the kid.
100%.
Good question for next week, Jamesetta.
We got